To this now, the Western Cape Women's Shelter movement is crying foul over government's empty promises to assist organizations fighting gender-based violence. The movement says it took just over a week for some shelters to fill up across the province after the lifting of the ban on alcohol sales. But for more discussions on this, I'm joined now via Skype by Cathy Cronje, Vice Chairperson of the Western Cape Women's Shelter movement. Cathy, thank you so much for your time and a very warm good afternoon to you. Now, I understand that there were promises that were made by government, of course, in just dealing with issues around gender-based violence, but you say that they have not kept those promises.
So I think our journey started in 2018 with total shutdown. We all went to the presidential summit on GBV and femicide in October 2018 in Joburg. And we were made several promises by the president there. On the 17th of June, so every address to the nation that he's done in COVID times, on the 17th of June, he actually stated in his address that there are two current pandemics in South Africa. The first being COVID-19, the second one being gender-based violence and femicide. Now, what we are saying is the first one, coronavirus, has been declared a national state of disaster. If there's another pandemic, being gender-based violence and femicide, why is he not declaring a state of emergency and actually doing something about it?
Now, what promises did the president also make to you? You mentioned that summit which took place in Johannesburg. What did he promise to you to do, rather, in addressing this issue that he has not delivered on?
So he promised to assign money to gender-based violence and femicide. What he did do was he stated that the National Strategic Plan, he would put an interim committee together to develop the National Strategic Plan. The National Strategic Plan has been developed and adopted. In there, sheltering is mentioned, but physically on the ground, us people that are running the shelters, doing the work and taking in all these traumatized victims of gender-based violence have seen absolutely nothing. We have not seen 1 cent from national government. And we're saying that until we do see 1 cent on the ground, at this stage, it means nothing to us.
But also, with that being said, Cathy, and just with that being said, so to cut you in there, I mean, besides the monetary side, I understand that also those numbers of survivors and victims coming into the shelters has increased. But also, you mentioned that it increased just after the ban on alcohol sales was lifted.
Yes, so the first couple of weeks of lockdown, we were quite surprised at how few people were coming in. And we thought that maybe people were more scared of coronavirus than the familiarity of gender-based violence, which is really bad. When the president announced that he was going to extend lockdown, a lot more cases started coming through. But he unbanned alcohol on the Monday, and by Friday, almost every single first aid shelter in Western Cape was completely full, and we are bottlenecking at the moment because there are so many cases coming through.
All right, a call for concern there, of course, for the president to consider. But thank you so much, Cathy. That's all the time we had with you. Cathy Cronje, Vice Chairperson of the Western Cape Women's Shelter movement, highlighting some of the issues around gender-based violence. We do know that those increased incidents of assault and killings continue, but also shelters across the country, of course, seeing more numbers of victims flocking to them, especially since the ban on alcohol had been lifted.